Hello and welcome again to Christian Village Church. As you see, we're here sitting around and we're going to have a round table, an opportunity for us to talk and exchange ideas and ask questions and just talk about some things that we don't usually get the chance to talk about. And one of the things I thought I'd open up with tonight was I had an opportunity to go to the planetarium last night, someplace I've never been before. And it was at Ocean County College here in Toms River. And it was really interesting because in all that we've been learning and studying about mythology and in relation to the planets and this universe and the effects, I found out something about the planet Uranus. And what I found out was very interesting in that the way that this particular planet travels around is different from all the other planets in that all the other planets, with all our technology, with the telescopes and everything, computers, were able to measure and be able to figure out where it's going to be at a particular time. We know the gravitational pull and all that. As far as Uranus goes, you can never figure out where it's going to be at whatever time. Whenever you think that it's supposed to be here, it's a little bit ahead or a little bit behind, a little bit north or a little bit south. It's never really where it's supposed to be. And for a long time, they started to research this to try to find out what was responsible for this type of inconsistency. And there was this great search that was going on for this planet called, they were naming it Planet X. And they thought that there'd be a planet somewhere behind Uranus that was responsible for this and having some type of a gravitational pull that would keep in this inconsistency. And they searched and searched, and what they did find out around 1936, I think they discovered the planet Pluto. Okay? Yeah, and in discovering this planet, when they figured out its gravitational pull, its density and all of that, and its distance from Uranus, they realized that it could not be responsible for the inconsistency of this rotation of the planet Uranus. So that was kind of done away with, and they continued to search and search and search, and up until recently, as recent as now, 1984, they have not been able to find any other planet or any other reason for the inconsistency of this planet and the fact that it is never really where it's supposed to be. In other words, it just will not stick to any of our, what we figure our intelligence or where it's going to be. We figured this out, computer this and that, and it's not, it doesn't just own up to that. And I thought it was interesting because what came to my mind is what Jesus said when he said, that, lo, they'll say the kingdom is here, the kingdom is there, and it's within you. And the other thing is that, it's just simply this. God is, and Uranus is. It's there. You can't pin it down, you can't point to it. It's here, it's there, it's there. It goes by its own. It's on its own way. So I just, what do you think about that? Anybody have anything to say about that?
Fantastic.
It's fantastic? Yeah, it is fantastic. It isn't great because...
Uranus always turns opposite.
You have to...
Uranus always turns the opposite of the other planets, true?
Also, right.
And what you said, it's like God in that it does so and so. Well, does it represent something like as Jesus is the sun god and Uranus represents what?
Uranus represents Father, heaven.
Oh, really?
Isn't that right, Bill?
Yeah, it's going to be hard to talk on this thing, but let's see if I can. Here, excuse me, I'll have to stand in front. Uranus, the word Uranus is a Greek word, means heaven.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so when in the Greek, the Bible says the kingdom of Uranus is at hand, meaning the kingdom of heaven is at hand. And Uranus also complements Jehoshua, Jesus, because it also means the sun, S-O-N. So it basically is the bridegroom coming back to claim the bride, Gaia. It means heaven, and it's a portrayal of a type of Christ and so forth. And I think one of the interesting things that I showed you this morning was that they said that all of the great earthquakes we've had over the last 100 years, they always occurred when Uranus was in a particular position that it will be in again May 5th, the year 2000. So I thought with the kingdom of heaven is at hand, Uranus, and of course that earthquake thing, although I think that really relates to consciousness, it could have some relevance to Uranus and its natural function, or whatever happens to these fields, you know.
In mythology, Uranus was the father and married to Gaia, the earth, and a whole story about Kronos and that. So it was pretty interesting. Yeah.
So the age of Aquarius.
have to.
So the age of Aquarius is that coming of the bridegroom, right? And that's why everything is changing. Everything is so exciting right now. So we gotta see. Anybody want?
I was watching the Discovery Channel last week, and they had a series on, it was entitled How the West Was Lost. And it shocked me because when I went to school, it was How the West Was Won. And it was our story of how we took over the Indians' land. And in this series, they gave their version of how it was taken from them so violently, and how they were just trying to protect their land. And I was just mostly angry because I wasn't taught that in school. And I kind of resented not being told the truth. And last night there was a show with Geronimo. It was about Geronimo, the Indian. And he was talking to one of the men in the cavalry, and he was saying, we're all God's children. Why can't we all share the land? Why do we have to live on the reservations? And they just wouldn't have any part of doing what he asked. And it just made me look at the Indian in a different light. That's all.
Anybody else? Pete, you have anything you'd like to share?
No, at the moment, nothing
Nothing?
that I can ask, to be honest with you.
I think what I want to say goes along with what Lynn just said, and that is that so many truths were hidden from us, affecting every single area. I mean, if you talk about the Indians and, other countries, how we were taught that, other countries were bad. When you look at the wars that we had, and we were always right and everybody else was always wrong. And so many people suffered under that type of tutorage. And with this age of Aquarius that we're into, and Uranus is going to come back and turn everything upside down, and that's what's happening. Even the title, How the West Was Lost. And if you take the Indians, the North American Indians, to this day, they're considered second-class citizens, with the way they're treated, and there's a high degree of alcoholism and suicide because we've taken away their land, and we've taken away the things that they were always so proud of.
And the dignity itself.
The dignity, the dignity. And it's just, it's pathetic, and our country has not avenged that. So you just wonder with programs like this, is that going to reverse itself also? And they had such a reverence for life, and when the white man came, they didn't.
We can learn so much from them.
We can, and the biggest thing is as you said, there's a resentment that you were not taught what was really truth. And I think that the more we dig, the more we see that so many things were not true that we were taught.
That even goes right back to what we're learning here, and as far as what we're learning about the truth of our belief system, as far as what was kept from us. It was just to be able to look at and see some of the books that were written and discovered at Nag Hammadi, and all little scrolls that you're not allowed to look at, and are just beginning to surface now, and you're able to read them for yourself. That and what we were talking about before. We have this situation. Bill just did a talk on the crop circles. And then they show up again in Oregon now, you're talking about. And why isn't this on the front page of the news? Why is it so subdued? Why is it kept so quiet when it should be on the front page? And it's like, until someone has an answer that is going to appease everybody or satisfy everybody's curiosity without them looking into something, you're not going to be able to know about it and hear the facts for yourself and draw a conclusion for yourself. Someone else is going to figure this out for you and tell you just what is what, and that's going to be the extent. You're not going to get the facts. And that's insulting to us, but that's the way it's always been. Even as far back as what has to do with UFOs, for instance. People were told that pilots were told they had to keep information. They weren't allowed to talk about certain things, and then later on it did come out because it bothered them so much. But it's all this suppression of this information, and it just keeps you. And no wonder there's fear and anxiety in this country. You don't know who to believe and what is truth. You don't know what you're believing and what is truth. Sure.
I have something else to say about Indians. The few people know, the history books certainly won't tell you, that it was white man that first scalped the Indians. Yeah. The United States government gave a bounty for every Indian scalp, and then we called the Indians savages because they scalped us back again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. See that? I didn't have that in my history book. Oh. See, that's what exactly what. Yeah. But all this withholding of information, and it just keeps you in the dark. And now, all of a sudden, like you said, in this time of Uranus and Aquarius, of this awakening, things are beginning to come to light. Things are beginning to come where you can find out for yourself and have understanding. And I think the meditation has a lot to do with that too, because it's opening you up to experiencing things and knowing things, just for instance, about yourself and about your life, and just what doesn't seem right to you, what doesn't seem morally right, what doesn't seem ethically right, and it's been told to you that this is the way and that's the way, and all of a sudden you're starting to look at things in a different way, and things don't seem morally right, they don't seem ethically right. There's something different. It's a new way of thinking, a new way of looking at things. My son's 11 years old. He came home to me the other day. He said, "You know what I learned in school today?" I said, "What?" He said, "I learned that we're all related to one another." I said, "Yeah." He said, "I mean the whole world. We're all related to one another. Isn't that neat?" I said, "Yeah, that's really neat. It's really neat that you learned that in school, too." I was never taught that in school, okay? So, you could see where things are getting into places, and it's a new way of thinking and a new way of looking at things. And no.
I just want to say, didn't every country in history act the same way, though? If they wanted to be selfish, they justified it. Just like the English coming over here and taking, and the Dutch and all, and taking things, some more than others. They justified it. They wanted their freedom from the other countries and the suppression they had, but they wanted the land and so on. Not all of them did that, but most did, obviously. Took it from the Indians and justified it. Like a few beads bought the land.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Excuse me.
When I was a child, I used to question my mother about the Bible. I couldn't understand it. I couldn't understand the things that went on in the Bible and why God would allow some of these things to go on. I'd ask her, and she'd say, "Well, these are the mysteries of God, and you never question the mysteries of God. God works in mysterious ways, and you're not supposed to understand them."
Yeah. Now you're starting to unveil those mysteries for yourself in this time and in this age. So it's becoming a book that's open to you for you to understand for yourself. What about you? You've been quiet there, fellow. You have a song and a dance for us here?
My ears have been very active, and I thank you for the moment.
It's our buddy Pete.
Well, actually, the only thing that was originally, does anyone know of, like, it may have some relevance, I think, the Greeks, I would assume, gave the names to these things that are up, Uranus and so forth. And since that was a society that involved itself with writing, it wasn't an oral culture, they wrote, there probably is and of, like, if you want to learn of historians and philosophers in 300 BC and so on, you can read them. They actually things you can read. But I have to believe that wonder where these names, which are very significant, I think, how they were chosen. What was the origin that could actually be in some way related to what we're just talking about. I don't know. It's just raising a question. That's
I'm sure that there is, and I think this fellow coming up right now might have an answer for us.
It's interesting for me when you start talking about that. That is, that's really a really interesting comment, Pete, because like what we were discussing this morning is the fact that Christianity that we know is actually a Greek religion. It is Greek. The whole thing is Greek. And the names that they gave to godheads and things all either had a numerical value, which had something to do with nature, or else the numbers were able to be traced down to identify some particular god. And it's very, very fascinating how now, as we can understand, like the name Jesus, a Greek name, the numerical value of the name attaches Jesus to the sun god deity worship. And when you look at where all this came from, like you're saying from Greece, we realize that their deity was Helios, which is the sun. And what we actually think of as the Judeo-Christian or American or Western European type of religion is, like you're saying, it is just about 100% Greek. And it contains Platonic theory, it contains Pythagorean theory, Philo, all of these different philosophers and so forth and so on who come out of Greece and who were of the ancient Greek. And this is what you said, too, is so interesting. And, of course, this is where you can get into some trouble, but let's go anyhow. You can actually trace, as you said, in writing, the identity of the Socrates, Pythagoras, Plato. There's no doubt of their existence. But now you come to this entity called Jesus, of which the only record of existence is in the Bible. There is no other. There's no record outside of it. I mean, a couple of lines by Josephus, which are even questionable. But I mean, when you think that the adventures of Jesus were all written by these Greek writers, and all form around the sun and sun worship and the movement of the sun, it has to leave you to wonder. There was nothing written in Palestine. There was nothing written in Jerusalem. It was written in Greece. About 300-400 years after all of these adventures were supposed to have happened, loaded with all types of mythological references, loaded with all types of numerology. And basically, if you really get down to it, what we're seeing in this story that we have taken as our religious and as our salvation message is a story of the ancient myth of the sun and its involvement with the cosmos and its involvement with living things. And I think that what you just said is the real big piece of the puzzle that we're starting to slide into place. We're starting to understand the symbolisms, but now we're seeing where these symbolisms came from. And let's not forget, too, that before the Greek language or the Greek literary style that we're familiar with now, they actually took, as part of their writing culture from the Phoenicians, which was more myth, more symbolism, more, all of it. So it's so exciting to finally be able to take that piece of the puzzle and slide it into place. Because if you take Plato and Pythagoras out of the Bible, you could just throw it away. Because it is just loaded with numerology and mysticism. So your point there is really well taken about the involvement of Greek philosophy and Greek mythology in the Bible. Is that what you were thinking of?
Approximately, yes. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Why don't you talk a little bit, maybe?
I just wanted to add something. When you were talking about Uranus, and Uranus, when you went to the planetarium, moving around so much, it's, as we know that one of the meanings is heaven, and heaven isn't just right, where New Jersey is located. Heaven is everywhere. And maybe that's why Uranus just flies around so much. Because there's you can't just say that it's there. Yeah. Like the kingdom of God is within us, and we believe then that heaven is our time here on earth, but it's not just here, it's everywhere. Moves around everywhere.
I also found I also thought it was interesting. I just thought that for a moment that it's not going to own up to our intellect, to our technology, and just bow and say, okay, I'm supposed to follow this course. I'll be at this point, just like all the other planets. It's different. And the fact, like what you said, that it rotates at the opposite direction as all the other planets. It's just doing what it does, and it's just there. God is, Uranus is, it's just there.
Yeah, that's like, no doubt, like so much like with me, and whenever, like with this message, and I always use the analogy and with people and learning about themselves of peeling an onion, but you think you've got it, and hey, I'm home now, and then another layer has to come off. But like our mind has a tendency to be so conclusive that, hey, I've got it, and I'm sure that with the scientists, they think, hey, we discovered it, and that's it. And Uranus is a nonconformist. Whenever they think they've got it, it probably just like goes somewhere else, and then okay, now what's happening type thing.
That thought made me have had the thought that means you have to keep searching. You have not pinned it down, so you have to keep searching. You have to keep looking because it's inconsistent with everything else. So what are we looking for? So stay with it and stay with it. And the same thing is true with ourselves. And I find even with the meditation, just as soon as you think you've overcome something, it gets fine-tuned and brought down a little more, and there's another little bit of you that has not overcome something or not dealt with something or is understanding something in a deeper way, and you find out something a little more interesting, a little more revealing about yourself, and it gets fine-tuned more and more. Like you said, with the onion, things begin to peel away and peel away and peel away, and you're constantly breaking down barriers and conclusions and thought processes and opinions that you've had that you're not even aware of, but yet they've been stored there within you for years and years and years, and you don't even think about them. And then through the meditation, these things begin to come up. You begin to question things, values, morals, and ethics like I was talking about before, and all of a sudden you begin to look at yourself a lot differently. You begin to look at people a lot differently, and you can't pin yourself or other people down either. It's just, so it stands in the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what brings to mind now is just like this lifetime compared to the many lifetimes that we have, that, okay, we have this is one segment in many, many, many lives. So what we're learning now, we think this is the epitome of, like a lot of people think this is the epitome of it all. Mm-hmm. But it isn't. It's just like a stepping stone as to where we're going to keep evolving to. And if we can all just stop right in the end of the stories and just keep probing and learning and looking and searching, then it'll just like unfold like that beautiful rose, and let the control out of our hands. Like we try and, as I said before, write the end of the story and try and control everything, and this is an absolute, and when we can get away from that type of thinking and just sit back and absorb and be willing to search, then I don't know, I just think it's a healthier road to travel. It takes a lot of frustration out.
I was going to say it's a lot happier, because when we write the ends of the story, whether we want to or not, we often write tragedies, and even things we think are going to be very happy. We may not get as much satisfaction out of that happy ending as we thought. And I think it's a very happy thing to feel. You'll never be bored. You'll always be, I hope that's true. You'll always be learning. Anybody want to say it?
Who or what are people of light or advanced beings, and how do they influence us or come in contact with us?
Wow, that's a good one. Billy?
Okay, it is. That's one thing before we just get into one other thing. Maybe you want to cover. One of the interesting things about Uranus is the turning of things upside down. And I think sometimes even us who are following this New Age closely have a tendency to discount what we're actually seeing before our own eyes. What you're seeing, even weather patterns, is absolutely bizarre. What you're seeing in the violent weather that's going on in California is beyond belief. And I was listening to a meteorologist tonight who predicted that this warming thing that we have going on here, 70 degrees in the middle of January, this type of flow may very well continue for about 5 months. And he says, as it does, what it will do when you get into about, around September, it'll blow away, like the hurricanes and all of this kind of business. It'll actually impact everything on the globe. So the weather patterns, storms, and all of this are part and parcel of this tremendous change that's going on in the universe. And I don't think we should discount that factor. Now, what are light beings? The light beings basically are friends of ours whom we have been made to forget when we are given life on this planet. It's not too much unlike the dream that you may have had, that after you wake up you are able to think of it a little bit, and then the more you think of it, the faster it runs away until it's gone. These are beings of intelligence and life that we know and are familiar with, okay? And when this cloud is lifted, we will understand and will remember who they are. And basically what has happened is this. The age of Pisces is the age of control, the age of domination, and that was epitomized in the church and in government and so forth and so on. The great cataclysm that's occurring now is like a woman with birth pains, is the movement out of this one age into another. This is a supersonic, cosmic, cataclysmic, I guess is the best way I can describe it. When you move out of a 2,600-year period of one type of influence, and now you're moving into another type of influence, you're moving out of the influence of materialism, out of the influence of competition, out of the influence of domination by groups, out of the influence of the money changers, and you're moving into the influence of consciousness. And as you move into the influence of consciousness, the electromagnetic fields that are playing on the brains of men and women and children and living things all over the world in the Aquarian age will start to trigger different electrical aspects within you that you'll be able to see things, you'll become aware of things, and you will become aware of beings that are intelligences beyond ours and above ours that are now moving to assist in the operation of the planet Earth in a positive, beautiful way. And remember what I said, that these are not beings that you do not know. These are beings that you know, and these are beings that are part of your family and part of, it's a great, exciting, it's just a wonderful, wonderful time to look forward to this. Family is coming back to make things right. And it's somewhat difficult to understand, except because we're sitting here still thinking in that dimension of the five senses. When we go into our meditation and we leave the five senses and we take our television receivers in our heads above, we then open ourselves to an understanding. But just try to think that all of the magnificent things that, let's call it God, has been wanting to do but couldn't do because of the restrictions of the Piscean age are being lifted and taken out of the way. And so these new electromagnetics now, which are set into place in Aquarius, are going to free the mind so that we'll be able to. So light beings are intelligences, the emissaries of the great God of nature, which are now free to come in and to mingle with us and to touch us and to instruct us and to open us to this new horizon of new life with nature. And, your Indians would be probably able to explain who they are even a lot better than I. But, surely it's just an exciting, exciting time that the family is coming back together, and this is the family of creation and nature, and that's what they are.
Al, didn't you have an apparition one time during a meditation here where you saw light beings?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, one time when I was here during meditation, I saw something, and I saw it from within myself. And what I saw was a light being came in front of Joan and knelt down in front of her and knelt down. And I remember, you know, it's funny how you remember specific things. They don't seem like anything, but they stand out, and they stand out for a reason, because we understand the symbolisms and the meanings of everything and how important and relevant they are. And I saw this entity, whatever, kneel down in front of Joan on the right side of her. And this person had like a black rug, very deep, deep black. And he rolled this rug out in front of Joan and opened it up. And within this rug were crystals. And these crystals were so pure that they were translucent. I mean, you could hardly make out the edges of them. They were that pure. And he sat there and looked at Joan. And I stayed in my meditation because I questioned it, and I wondered, what am I saying? Is this me making this? And I stayed, and within my meditation, I felt like I was transported to a room, a very dark room, and I felt or sensed wood, dark, dark wood. And I felt myself being led to what seemed like some type of a cabinet or something, and there were 3 drawers in it, and the center drawer was opened, and I saw this black carpet or whatever being lifted out of there, and I was made to know and understand that this was like a second stage of awareness, understanding, sensitivity that was being given to Joan, that she had evolved to this particular stage. Now, you can say what you will, call it what you want, but, you know, it wasn't something that I would, and, you know, then to come up to her after meditation and tell her this, you know, say, hey, you're going to think I'm nuts. But, sure.
Could you repeat this, what I'm got to say, because they won't hear me. No, that's all right. Light beings. Okay, sometimes we think of, you know, people that light up. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Understand what it is. These are beings that communicate with enlightened people.
Beings that communicate with enlightened people.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to ask
Okay.
that question.
Okay. Well, then your question's been answered.
They don't glow in the dark.
They don't glow in the dark, right? Okay. It's a being that I think of it as just someone that is there to help you with information. Okay.
If you are enlightened and open to it.
If you are enlightened and open to it, they're there.
They can,
Okay.
but if you're not, they can't.
Okay. Sure.
Is there such a thing as an aura around someone, like an energy aura? Because I think that I saw one. I saw it around Bill.
I see it every Sunday morning.
Yeah, I saw it around him, definitely. I saw a beautiful pink light, like a pale pink glow all around you.
I'll just be real quick with this. That is purely scientifically correct principle. We are electromagnetic entities. We live in these bodies which are connected to the umbilical cord of electromagnetism, and they give off these radiations. And some people are able to discern various colors that come off of the human body. But you see it a lot in these ancient religious pictures of a halo, which is an aura, and it generally they generally try to paint that around a particularly enlightened person. That's what that halo is, you know. But it's a real thing, and many times if someone dies, people are able to see that electromagnetic field leave the body, et cetera, et cetera. But it's a real legitimate electronic phenomena that involves the human body. I wanted you to talk a little bit about what you and Al are going to be doing, because
She doesn't want to talk about it.
well, you could give them a little idea, because you're going to be having shows on here. It's going to be interesting.
Okay, Billy. When we were in Florida recently, I had heard of a book, and I had started to read it. It's called Men from Mars and Women from Venus. And I had a captive audience in the car with me, who was the driver, Billy. And I thought, man, I could never catch him at home to listen to this tape, because somebody had loaned me a tape of the book. So I started playing it, and Bill really liked it. And he said, well, he says, you know, you have to do something about this. You know, people should should be able to be privy to this information. And I'll get into what the information is. And I said, well, only if Alvier will do it with me. He can be the man from Mars, and I'll be the woman from Venus. And what the book, it's written by Mr. Gray, and it's excellent in that he just clarifies. He's been under a lot of criticism, and, you know, it's kind of like establishment against this knowledge that's been given to him. And he is able to clarify the feelings that men have and the way they react emotionally or not emotionally, versus the way the woman will take that very same situation and what she will do with it. So we're just going to have like very informal sessions, and I hope that it can be in something, a similar setting to this, that we can be in a circle where everybody can see the other person's face instead of the back of their head, and open it up. And we're going to play part of the tape and open it up to discussions, because it's if we don't open up the box, we're never going to know what's inside of it. And this, again, is knowledge that we just weren't aware of. So now we have this knowledge, and if we can improve relationships and can make life that much more harmonious between people, then why not? So this is what we will be doing. Sure.
I started to read the book, and I've gotten about 3 chapters through, and I was reading it with my wife. And we were talking about certain things, and I was amazed to see how conditioned we are in our thinking. And someone says, you say something to someone, you've said one thing, that's not what they've heard. Mm-hmm. Okay? And the same is true coming back. Someone will say something to me, and I get offended. You know, my ego, my masculinity, my being in charge is offended. Not that, and she didn't mean it that way, she meant it to help, but that's just the beginning of it. And I'll tell you, I could really see, and I started to put some of these things into practice, because, you know, you're working on something that has to do with a relationship and with yourself and with growing and understanding one another and bettering your relationship and finding out about yourself. And there were a lot of things that were back and forth, equally part of me, and things that never happened. I don't remember or not aware of that were a part of me, but they were a part of my wife, and vice versa, and things that I responded to in a feminine way, okay, which is okay with me because I understand and recognize the feminine aspect of my personality, but it puts you in touch with that, and I think it's really going to be interesting because it'll help me to understand relationships with the opposite sex and also know myself and be able to see how I respond to things, how conditioned I am just because of the male way of thinking and seeing things and perceiving things. It's really interesting.
Yeah, and we have a tendency to think that everybody thinks the way we think, okay? And I usually use the analogy of a child. Until they spend another night at a friend's house, they really don't know that people live differently than they live. And until they have that exposure, it's like everybody in the world does exactly as we do in our household. So this is what's so good about the book. It just lets you know that everybody does not think the same. And to go back to an early teaching of Billy, I'm an apple, you're an orange, you're a banana. But if we can open our minds and just allow that person to be who they are and understand that they're thinking differently, it just makes life so much easier.
I'm really looking forward to doing this. I've only done like 3 chapters of the book, and already I can see so much of it that is, you know, relative to the way I think and the way I act, and it can bring about some changes in me. So, anything else we'd like to talk about?
You don't have anything?
Hold
on. When we were watching the show last night on the crop circles, they had one area of the field, this one person had done some photography that was lighter, okay, it shaded a lot lighter, and they felt that light beings were there. At that time,
they were
yeah. Remember that, Bill?
Yeah. Do you want to
And it just like when they said that scientifically last night, you know, that these light beings were. Yes, yeah, they showed you the picture.
Yeah, they called the word light beam.
Yes, and they showed on the TV screen that this area was lighter in color. It was really neat. It was really neat. I've never seen light beings, but I have felt them in this room when we have had meditations. Like when we had a meditation, I don't know whether it was last Sunday night's meditation. I felt them around my head, and I could feel my left side. I could feel like something against the left side of my head, and then I could just feel like a swirling in the rest of my head. Yeah. Billy wants to talk.
Well, no. Did you have a question, Pete, about that, or a thought about these?
No, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Well, you did very well. What I think people should do is really pay attention to these television shows that are done on crop circles, because they're not being done by New Age. Every once in a while they sneak in somebody there that's a little bit, short and start saying about. But most of the time the program is conducted by scientists and prestigious scientists. And, we've done the program. There is something that's happening, and it's happening all over the world. And these crop circles that were on TV last night have just showed up in Oregon. And this is where, the section of the field was lighter, and they mentioned the word light beings and so forth and so on. There is something that is causing the wheat to become electromagnetized. And then, of course, electromagnetized, the scientists have reached the conclusion there is no doubt on, regardless of what, there is no doubt these are electromagnetic imprints into the wheat. There's no question about that. Where it's coming from, they said, we don't know. But this wheat is becoming electromagnetized. And but then, that's fine. The second point, and this is something that they're not addressing, what do the symbols mean? I don't think that the scientific community has reached the point of being able to say, hey, these are mythological or mystical ancient symbols. They just know they're lines and circles. Okay. And so they're saying somehow these electromagnetic fields are imprinting into the wheat, these circles. And somebody, some type of a mystic, has to sit down with the scientists, because I don't want to see this stuff fall into the hands of New Age people or religious people or mystical people. I like to see the scientists keep working at it, because I believe God and science basically are the same. And but somebody has to sit down with the scientists and say, look, you're telling us about the electromagnetic fields that are doing this. Now let's look at some of these ancient symbols and compare what's in, and these are intelligent signs that are being made. So it's really interesting thing. You want to pass that around here?
When you look at the symbols, they almost look Greek in origin.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. When you look at, did you see that too?
No.
When you looked at them?
No, but I mean, go ahead. You might have seen something I didn't.
That it just looks like, like things that you've seen from Greece. And they look like Greek in origin. Like you'll see like some jewelry symbols even, and they're from Greece. And you could see, like some of those. That's what I thought when I saw it.
Keep in mind, just point the microphone over. Keep in mind that those symbols that come out of Greece, they got from Babylon and ancient places. So the symbols are a universal code of cryptograms that are from time beyond infinite.
Yeah, that's true. And another thing that came out in the program last night were animals reacted very strangely prior to the crop circle. This one man had a humane society, and all of the dogs, and the guard dog especially, they were just so hyped up, and they were jumping up and down in their pens, and nothing would quiet them down. This was just prior to the crop circle being cut. And another girl had gone for a ride on her horse, and the horse acted strangely. He wouldn't go near near the circle, where that circle was going to be. He wouldn't go near there. And she said that he was like, you know, sort of wide-eyed when she came back, and it was a very unusual journey. So the animals sensed.
Could you point the microphone? You know what is amazing to me? Religion, the Christian programs. Now, the Christians are on TV 24 hours a day on Trinity broadcast. They haven't even mentioned this. They can't deal with this. And not one word has been mentioned about these real things which are happening.
Excuse me.
You want to bring that up?
Just before we go over there, before I pass it over, they probably are not seeing the significance of it. It's like the onion, it hasn't been peeled yet. It's still got the
Well,
skin on it.
I understand that, but you still have to see it on TV.
The religionists are saying so much about all the things that are happening are what is in the Bible literally.
Yeah.
You know, the storms, and the children will turn against their parents, and you hear that all the time. And of course then I have a friend who says, well, I don't care what they say, it's happening, you know. And people try to deny that that's what it is, but it is happening.
And what's happening?
In other words, all the upset in the weather and what is it? Earthquakes? Not earthquakes. The other things, and the floods and so on, and the young people turning against the parents.
You know, there's an interesting thing. I read one time about, you know, the juvenile delinquency and the crime in the streets and young people attacking adults and women being brutalized and so forth by people in the streets and so forth. And the guy said, this is off of a statement from a Roman newspaper or something like that.
Carol.
It never has been any different. It never has been any different, you see. And, oh my God, if we think...
It's worse.
Well, it's only...
I mean, it's worse than, say, 50 years ago.
Only
Much.
because it's encouraged because you have this medium called television. And television, every time somebody goes to the bathroom, you see it. And it's encouraged. Hey, I mean, look, 50 years ago, there was a guy named Adolf Hitler. I mean, you know, that happened 1940s? That was 50 years ago. And it wasn't too long ago. It wasn't, what was it, 20 years ago when they were burning Los Angeles down in the Watts riot? They were burning Newark down. They had riots all over. You know, and these things have happened. The main thing that you're basically seeing now, and I think the beautiful thing that you're seeing, is that the systems are losing control because there's a new need. There's a need for a new control. And, you know, you can always, if you want to look at the Bible, anybody would look at the Bible and say, well, all of these horrible things are as a result of God, then, you know, God is not love. God is a demon. And you know, we know that that's not true. So I think basically when we look at the fulfillment of this age, the things that we're talking about, such as these crop circles, the things that we've seen with the breakdown of a lot of these oppressive governments and so forth, is the really thing to look at. And I'll tell you another thing. And this is something to me that I think is very, very important. The reason that you see the violence in the streets and the young people, okay, is because of a breakdown in the traditional family. The traditional family is breaking in pieces because there are single parents, there is either a mother or there is a father, there is no mother and father. And the reason that the traditional family has broken in pieces is because religion ordained it to break in pieces by decreeing that one partner to the marriage was of less value than the other. And religion said that it is the woman who is of less value, and over a period of time, marriage started to evolve with the point that the woman would no longer serve and bow to the man. And so then the independence started, the need to go for works and all of this type of a business. And it was an unequal yoke. And it was religion defined. And it comes out of the Bible, it comes out of the Vedas, it comes out of the sutras, where woman is less worthy than man. And it has caused a tremendous upheaval. And, women wanting to go out and get a job. So you're going to have to develop a whole new culture of what marriage is, a co-partnership or so. And it's true. You have more of this violence because of the traditional family is broken up, but the traditional family is broken up because it was destroyed by organized religion, and Christianity played a tremendous part in it. Because all of these religious organizations are nothing but boys' clubs and men's clubs. And women have no place in it. How can you have a continuation of traditional family if you do not honor woman as anything more than a factory for turning out babies? How can you have a traditional family if you extol the husband to have a career and go to the four corners of the world and be entertained and be a corporate executive and tell her that she must stay home and sew socks or stir soup? You can't. It's not fair. If the woman is the more responsible, then it is the man that should stay home and serve soup and knit socks. Okay. But tradition, religion couldn't deal with that. See, because religion portrays God as a man. See? And what you're saying is true. But I put the finger squarely at the doorstep of religion for the destruction of the family because of the degrading of women. In the same way that I put right at the doorstep of religion for the abortion crisis in the world because of the fact that they put sex on a plane of only can have it if you're going to have a baby, and everybody should have babies, and they don't teach contraception, and they don't teach proper use of sex and so forth and so on. You can't have your cake and religion is an absolutely destructive force.
Yeah, it seems to me that a single parent could be both father and mother, since we all express female and male. The only problem is having someone to care for the child while one goes to work. You can't split that person.
That's right. That's right.
And that would have to be worked out.
You have to work out. You have to devise a new culture. And another thing you have to do, you have to watch. And I think something's going to explode in this country, really, because what you're seeing now is a typical movement of the government or corporate power structures to save money. We got to cut back. And whenever they start to cut back, they aim their gun at the little guy, the little person. What you're saying is very true. A single mother can take care of a child, but not earning $6 and $7 an hour, because then she's got to have 2 or 3 jobs just to break even. And so where are these same politicians who want to point to you and say, oh, we got to cut in your Medicare. We got to cut back on your welfare. Oh, you can't have Medicaid. We got to cut all of these things. Where are these same politicians to conjure up the guts to say to the corporations, hey, you're going to have to cut your profits down a little bit, and we're going to raise the minimum wage from $5 an hour to $10 an hour. Say, no, we can't do that. In fact, the president, we can't do that. So I would hope that there is some old guard, because I'll tell you something right now. If indeed these politicians have their way and attack the poor and the underprivileged, then you're going to see those Watts riots, and you're going to see those shootings in the big cities again. And it comes right from the same place. It is not caused by the poor people. It is not caused by the oppressed people. It is caused by the corporations, and it is caused by the corporate politicians. Well. And I shouldn't say all this because I'm not in politics. I'm going to get out of here.
So then what we're actually saying here, Billy, is that religion, the very first teaching that we had in this church was on the 4 horses and the fourfold nature of man. Yes. Okay, that was the very first teaching that you ever did. And it was the foundation, okay? Because this is what a person needs in order to survive and in order to be happy and in order to be able to handle the ups and downs of life, correct?
Yeah.
But religion has put the intellect, okay, the fourfold nature is your spirit, your intellect, the physical, and the emotional, okay? So they have put the intellect before the spirit. The spirit is like number 4 down there because they don't deal with that. They've put physical as number 2 and not dealt with the emotional, because in saying that, you know, your procreation has to always be the aim of any type of sexual pleasure, I mean, emotionally, that's an impossibility.
Not
So
only
they've
is it an
taken-
impossibility, but it is a hypocritical bunch of garbage,
Yeah.
because what we're seeing
Yeah.
are religious people abusing little
Right.
boys behind the altar,
Right.
or, you know, our heroes from TV jumping over the
Right.
fence to run down to a whorehouse somewhere and have
Right.
their own sex while they're on the platform pointing fingers
Yeah.
at the poor people and making people guilty.
Right.
It is an absolute atrocity.
Yeah.
Religion is an atrocity.
Yeah, but if you take, you know, what was taught, when you taught that fourfold nature, you taught it from Genesis to Revelation, how everything was one and then split into 4s, correct? Okay, the 4 horses, okay? So with religion eliminating all of that, it had to be the destruction of man,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
okay? Because they only dealt with 2 parts, and that was really the physical and the intellectual,
That's right. Isn't it?
okay?
Yeah,
So they really took man and split man.
that's right.
And now, with this age, man is coming into a oneness with himself, into a wholeness.
That's right.
Interesting, because what you just said about the physical and the intellectual, and that is another thing to suppress women, because men are looked at as more physical, more intellectual, not to be emotional and spiritual, as obviously, you know, they're not looked at again. And now you have all of this stuff happening, and the new information and things that you've been explaining and understanding about spirit, the feminine aspect of spirit and all of that, and giving some credibility to the feminine aspect. And just the other day I saw an article in the paper by one of these rock and roll singers, and he just said that sometimes I'm masculine and sometimes I'm feminine. And that was great to see somebody be able to put something in the paper and make that type of a statement like that and give credit to that. Yeah, but isn't that interesting? The intellect and the physical, and those are the things that are attributed to the masculine, and why man is ruled and is superior to woman, supposedly.
Go around and say goodnight.
Is that, are we saying good night then? Good night, Lynn. Are we saying good night? Anybody else have anything they'd like to say before? No?
I'd like to have something to say. When my husband died, I was left to raise 2 children, and fortunately, we did get Social Security for each one of them, and for myself, and I was able to stay home and raise them and be the mother and the father. And I had to change a lot when he passed on. I had that masculine nature had to come out, and I had to take charge of them, and not, you know, and I had to use discipline a lot more so than I ever had before. And it really does work. You can do it if one parent is able to be there with the children, and which I was.
Okay. All right, well, we thank everybody for being here. Thank you for being here. And may I just suggest, if you have any topics or any questions, maybe you can write it in and we can talk about it. Anything that, you know, so that you can feel included into these discussions also. The address will be on the screen, and if there's any topics or questions or opinions that you have and you'd like us to talk about, you know, we'd certainly like to be open to it so that you can feel included in this also. All right, we thank you for being with us, and we'll see you again. Good night.